Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul Oneid, and today I'm not interviewing anyone. I have a guest host, Dr. Dave Osborn.
Hey, great to be here, Paul. Happy to guest host with you. This is going to be a
Yeah.
good, really good episode. We got some good questions lined
We
up.
did get some good questions. So this is the first Q&A episode that I've done. Reason being, I'm going to be ramping up to twice a week podcasts on the channel just to make sure that we can help out as many people as possible, which puts me up to 5 YouTube videos a week on the channel. Oh, I know. I
Yeah,
know.
buddy.
We're a content generation machine over here. I'm a creator now. I don't know if you knew that. I'm a creator. Um, funny, I was trying to record a video in the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh
And
gosh.
Liv was in her office, and the way the house is here, her office is like right outside the kitchen. So she like opens her door. I'm like, I'm trying to record a video. And she goes, am I an influencer's wife now? I don't like it.
I don't like this role. I didn't sign
Don't
up
like
for this.
it. Yeah. But like some of the videos have the dogs in them.
Oh yeah.
It's
You
gonna
got to have the
be,
random like scurrying on the hardwood.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What have you been up to, man? What's up?
um, we're getting ready now. We are 4 weeks out from hosting a WRPF meet
Okay.
at Ops. We haven't hosted a meet since 2018, back
And you
when we were
host
doing.
in the gym, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, in the gym. So we haven't done that since 2018,
Awesome.
with like UPA meets. So now we have WRPF backing us. It's been really awesome working with them as a federation as a whole. They've been super supportive, really good at providing us resources. We have Rena Davis flying up from California with a couple other
Okay.
WRPF refs that are going to help meet direct and put everything on, while Monica, one of my other coaches at the gym, is still getting all her reffing hours certified, and then she can be our meet director after that. So like it's a really nice process of making sure people are judges first, they get experience with the sport on that side, and then they can pivot to meet directing. So it's really well like thought out and put together. I'm pretty happy with how it's all turned out. Monica's been amazing in terms of like production quality. Like we have banners, we
Oh,
have
awesome.
partitions segmenting part of the gym, right? And now we have all the equipment. We have 3 monoliths, all the competition plates for warm-ups and the competition platform, all the
Unreal.
platforms in the warm-up room, everything's on a platform and looking nice. 3 competition elite FTS benches, right? Like it's a slick little setup for
It is.
6,000 square feet. We're really pumped.
I love that. Who's the director for the state in Washington?
The state director in Washington, um, we are still like finalizing, just because there's been some hierarchy changes with
Yeah, yeah.
WRPF.
The BRPF is going to
But
transition.
it'll probably be Lisa Herrera. Um,
I'm sure I'm familiar
she's
with her.
she's a super heavyweight women's lifter, very strong, like upper 470 480 dots. Yeah, and that's what I'm really excited about, is like everyone who's involved at like the meet director, state rep, local, is very strong, very well integrated
Mhm.
in the sport, and kind of just knows what has to happen at the meet to make it like successful for all the lifters from
Absolutely.
the local point, but also like putting on quality productions that draw in, people from out of state. And
Hmm.
we've got people coming from Montana and Utah and Idaho and California and Oregon, right? So it's really cool to see like even local meets get a little bit of travel for them, right? And really
Hmm.
bring people together, especially on our side of the state, where you have to cross the mountain range most of the time, 3 hour drive to go like compete anywhere. So
Right.
to be able to like hold it in the middle of Washington State's a really great advantage, and kind of makes it even playing ground for everyone who's coming to compete.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I'm actually enjoying getting back into like because I was obviously detached from powerlifting for a little
Sure,
bit, but
sure.
you know, one of our coaches is a WRPF meet host up in
Yeah.
Canada, and so getting back into the actual sport of powerlifting and where it's come along the way and
Oh my
it's
gosh,
grown,
it's grown
it's
such a
incredible.
ridiculous amount.
It's incredible. And you know what? There's a lot of drama and there's a lot of
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah, there
There
is.
will always be drama, there will always be bullshit. And I choose to look at it from the perspective of the people with the loudest voices are not always the ones that you need to be listening to. It's the people
Yeah.
who are actually taking action to improve the sport.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Garrett Fear, that guy loves powerlifting and wants
Yep.
it to be as legitimate as possible. And I saw that in person when he came up to Guelph.
Yeah.
He pissed off a lot of people, but those people who he pissed off, they were called in their bullshit.
Yeah. They need a
And
reality check.
and they need a reality check. If we want to
Yeah.
make this as legitimate as possible and have it in the enhanced Olympics, which would be fucking
Yeah.
amazing.
How
If
freaking rad
if
is that,
if
dude?
if enhanced powerlifting makes it to the Olympics before tested powerlifting, I will be rolling.
I'll be there at the inaugural fucking event. I'll get tickets, I'll fly, everything, right?
Yeah.
Like support every go USA signs and everything.
Also love how the main supporter for like the what are they calling it? The enhanced
The
Olympics?
enhanced Olympics,
Yeah, is Peter Thiel,
right? You
the
got to have that
founder of
billionaire
PayPal.
money. Yep.
The founder of PayPal.
I
Amazing.
love PayPal. Sign me up, Peter.
How many drugs have you allegedly not bought on PayPal?
It's the ultimate sponsor.
Ultimate.
I don't know what
Um,
you're talking about. I only buy party supplies.
Party supplies. Perfect. Perfect. Um, Man, let's actually jump in. Let's just jump right in
Perfect.
because these
Right
questions
on.
are really good. We have about 10 of them. Hopefully we can get into through as many as we can in about an
Yeah.
hour. I don't want to take up too much of our time, and I really don't think a lot of people want to listen to that much powerlifting talk. But
Oh, they're gonna listen. They're gonna like it.
let's start it off with a banger. I think the first one would be, what is something that you believed in when you started coaching that you no longer believe in now?
Where do you even start? I remember, okay, this is good because I was kind of like going back through like it was like the first Beyond the Platform podcast I did with Tony and Trevor.
Yeah.
And I remember saying in that to Tony, we don't really do singles a whole bunch in training. Singles are for testing, right? You know, and I just don't want to test myself all that often when I'm training. I'll do fives, triples, doubles, kind of rotate through that, and then I'll do some singles when I get to the platform. I no longer think that's a great way to go about setting up peaking cycles for a powerlifting meet,
Yeah.
never touching a single until the competition day. Probably not my best moves.
Yeah. When I read this question, the first thing that popped into my mind was everything. And
Totally.
the reason I say that, I don't say it in jest. I say it in general because I used to be very opinionated on the fact that there was a right way and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah.
And I used to be convinced that there were certain things that never worked and
Yes.
certain things that always worked. And what I've come to realize as I've gone through as a coach, as a lifter, I have prepped for meets and I have clients prepped for meets where we do a lot of singles. I've
Yeah.
done meet preps where I have done no singles.
Yep.
I've even had a client do a meet prep where he never went over 80%, and all of them have PR'd.
It all works.
It all works. What ultimately works is whatever works.
Yeah.
And you're the way in which you program, the way in which you gather data, the way in which you interpret the athlete's response to whatever it is that you're doing. This whole concept of merging strategies, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
very fancy term, and Mike gets all the credit. Mike Teixeira gets all the credit for that, for coining the term. But it's something that we all should be doing, regardless
Yes.
of the programming model that we choose, and that we put forth this stimulus, we
Right.
assess the adaptation, and we determine if it's actually the adaptation that we want to be having. And then you just plan to repeat that heading into a meet
As much as you can. Yeah,
as
for
much
as
as you
long as
can.
you
No,
can.
nothing's perfect, of course.
Right.
Um, and that plays into everything, whether it's, mobility work, um, whether it's exercise selection, exercise
Mm-hmm.
variety, frequency, total volume. There are prescriptions for everything, but ultimately, none of these prescriptions matter at all. And that kind of like, I now no longer see, you know, I no longer see these direct input output equations, although they
Hmm.
exist. I definitely see it more like the matrix. And I'm just like,
Yes, the flow charts.
the flow
Yeah. And
charts.
everything kind of runs together.
Yeah.
How then, when you look at assessing what's successful and what maybe wasn't, how often do you do that assessment period? Or does it change? Is it variable?
It's honestly ongoing.
Sure.
And so that's why I work on like a weekly iteration of programs
Same.
to allow myself the freedom to pivot one way or the other
Yeah.
on a proactive basis rather than a reactive basis,
Yep.
and to try different things, because in when you program in a very iterative fashion, it's like agile project management. Like you
Yeah.
change things up as you go, gather feedback much quicker. And does it get us into a position where we might, veer a little bit too far in one direction or another? Yeah, for sure.
Probably. Yeah.
But when you look back on that training block, you can look at, okay, like we trended in this direction and these were our indicators that we were looking for, and they're going to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
But doing programs on a weekly basis definitely helps me with that kind of iterative fashion in which I program.
Hmm.
And this is something that I don't like. I have a lot of trouble conceptualizing the way I do things to people because
Sure.
I've been doing it for so long.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I love, Coach's Corner and this podcast, because I do get to kind of revisit concepts.
Yeah.
That question is a phenomenal one. And I would say the process of review is ongoing, but I do use either off-season peaking blocks
Hmm.
or meets as ways
Yeah.
to assess. Um,
Well, on a meet, especially,
yeah.
right? Like a meet's such a great, some definitive point of what you've been training for, getting there, going through that event,
Yep.
right? And then having an immediate post action review that's
Yeah.
collaborative, right? Between you and your lifter, your athlete. And here's some questions. What do you think worked really well? What do you think you struggled on during this prep? What can we do better? Getting that collaboration between you and your lifter going and really putting together something where, oh, they've really thought this part of the block went really well
Yeah.
and really like that. That's definitely something we can incorporate again, or, the opposite, right?
One thing that I really love about, having the post-mortems, like the
Yes.
post-meet activations, and even the week to week touch points, and multiple times a week touch points, which is something that I try to tell all the coaches that I work with, is like, hey, like talk to your athletes more than just on their check-in days.
Oh man. Yeah.
Your athletes will start to learn what works for them, and they will
Yes.
give you feedback when you've deviated too far.
Yes. Yeah.
That's one thing that I have is like a hallmark of my coaching style is it is very collaborative, because I want that
Yes.
person involved in the process and learning. And I think that speeds up progress more than anything, because the feedback that you get is so much more accurate and timely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're that lifter, they're your biggest source, right, of information. And
Mhm.
to just kind of like go into autopilot leaves so much on the table of what you could be doing to get better buy-in, right, to get real belief in your system and your product. And
Yeah,
that's where all that extraordinary progress happens.
without question. Without question. Your turn. Pick a
Okay, good.
question.
Let's see here. Let's go with, what are, I know you're working with Danny Lamartina.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite parts of working with a coach versus self-coaching?
Ooh, so in this instance, working with
Mhm.
Danny, I had to admit to myself that I couldn't solve my own problems.
Yes.
So for those listening that don't know, I have a very extensive injury history, especially with my left hip, left knee. And I had tried anything and everything that I had access to. I've had tried other coaches. And finally, Danny's been a friend of mine, and she's consulted with me on a number of occasions, actually. So I've, had consults with her along the years. And every time that I reached out to her, she gave me something that allowed me to be pain-free enough to perform. And I was like, I'm just gonna ask her to coach me.
Yes.
Because when I
Yeah.
finished, like I only competed in bodybuilding because I literally could not train for powerlifting anymore.
Right.
I literally could not squat or deadlift. So I reached out and was like, I would like to return to the platform. Do you think that's possible? And her answer was, nothing's off the table. It's
Right.
just going to take a really long time. And
Takes work.
we're
Takes
actually
effort. Yeah.
a year and a month into this. So 13 months into this, I'm training pain free. I'm squatting and deadlifting every week. Pulled
Amazing.
700 last month. Like
Yep.
things are going well. I've squatted almost six already. Um, so there's like I still can't put a bar on my back yet. I'm
Sure.
so immobile. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm also 250 pounds now, so like it's a
Oh, Paul.
yeah, it's a bit of a
Way to
difference.
go, buddy.
Yeah,
That
but
married life plus 20.
working with a coach for me is a complete relinquishing of control and trust. That I'm so grateful to have Danny as that person. She's a
Yeah.
close friend of mine as well. Um, at first, it was interesting because she wanted the relationship to be collaborative, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Sure.
I will give you as much feedback as you want from me, but ultimately, I need you to make the decisions because
Yeah.
I'm well aware of my shortcomings as an athlete and that I want to push, 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 push. And that's not what I need in order to be successful.
Sure.
Um, so the fact that I've been able to offload my consciousness onto her, I show up at the gym, I do what I'm told, I get to be an athlete.
Yes. Oh,
And that to me is so invaluable because I spend all day, and this isn't a gripe of any kind. I spend all day
no.
pouring into others,
Yeah. It's a reality of
and
the
I
work.
fucking love it.
Yes.
But it's very, very valuable to me to have someone pour into me.
Yeah.
And for me, I would say that's the biggest thing is to, be an athlete again.
Yes.
I'm learning so much. Like,
Oh,
for people who don't know Danny, like she's the way in which she views movement is a lens through which no one else in the industry views movement. And I'm so excited for the stuff that she's going to be putting out in the next year, because like our goal with her, like she's also one of my business mentees,
yes.
is we're going to create a curriculum for her to be able to teach her viewpoint to other people,
Right
which I
on.
know
Oh,
there's
that's
so much
so
demand
awesome.
for. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I still use her 90-90 hip lift video weekly, sending it to people.
Yeah.
What she did with Casey Williams. I,
Oh, yeah.
and Danny's been at this for a long time in the trenches doing incredible work. And like just like you said, that lens thing is so critical as a coach, seeing another coach's lens, how they view problems, right? We're all trying to find those same solutions, but everyone's going to have their different biases and the different ways they see things. Excuse me. And just getting that glimpse, right? And now you're the athlete. You just have to follow the plan. You
Yeah.
look at it, right? When you get on Sunday, okay, I have to be prepared for this day's bench workout, this day's, emphasis on posterior chain, whatever it's going to be, right? And really like, cool, my nutrition's going to be on point, my sleep's going to be on point. You get to be the athlete just taking care of their body. And that's all you have to do is just show up and do the work.
Absolutely. Are you still self-coached?
So I'm working with Josh Bryant now.
That's right. Okay.
I'm on week 10 with week 9, week 10 with Josh. And I'm also having Susan Graham, who's a IFBB pro, doing my diet, my
Very
sports
cool.
nutrition. And I've
Yeah.
been working with Susan since
For a while
I want to
now.
say September. Yeah,
Yeah.
for quite a while now. And it's amazing. I've never had such good gut health, had such incredible sustained energy throughout the day because my carbohydrate intake is really on point and really consistent.
Hmm.
And before, I would always overdose on protein. I'd hit 300, 320 grams and then have no appetite left, right, for the carbohydrates that I actually need. And so we backed off our protein a little bit at the beginning so I could focus on getting in my carbohydrates like I needed to. And now I can do 600-700 grams on a training day with no insulin, nothing to help that, right? Just pure
Hmm.
training, good meal timing and management, right? And my flaccid blood glucose in the mornings
You're
sub 100.
flaccid. You're flaccid blood
My
glucose.
flaccid, my flaccid, my fasted blood glucose in the mornings is regularly under 100, where it used to be in the 130s, right? And
Oh wow.
yeah, it's a,
That's
I
a
mean,
huge metric for anyone
it's
who is not familiar. You know,
massive.
130 is like essentially
Yeah,
insulin resistant. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that was all changed without drugs, without anything, right? Just a proper sports nutrition protocol
Mhm.
incorporated over months, right? And combining that now with like the kind of volume that Josh gives me makes it all possible, right? And I knew that
He's
was
hammering you.
yeah, he's absolutely. I've never done so much upper back work, direct bicep tricep work. Like the push-ups we do will be like 10 sets of 15 with 60-second rests, and I just boom fly through them. Right. The kind of exercise selection he's using has challenged me. We're doing like 450-pound sled drags, 600-pound farmers walks, and then go deadlift, right? And just
Ooh.
like yeah, just these really incredible GPP cycles, then getting a little bit more specific and a little bit more specific and a little bit more specific. And Josh has been really good to collaborate with, just giving them heads up like, hey, this movement's a little tricky here. How about we sub this out? Or I have this equipment. What about if we do this? But like overall, it's such a relief to me because I was the same way with coaching. I'm doing everyone else's stuff. I know what training is. I can walk into the gym and make up a workout for myself
Yeah, for
on the
sure.
spot. And that's kind of what I would do. And like seeing everything laid out now a week ahead of time and knowing the schedule of, okay, we're going to have a 3-week ramp, reload, back off a little bit, 3-week ramp, reload, back off, and kind of follow that schedule has really, it's different than anything I've ever done before in terms of faster, more frequent reloads. Um, but I can really tell like the consistency of my strength is climbing and staying a lot higher than it would normally be with me just smashing myself week in and week out. And I can really feel it's building to something really, really incredible. Whereas like, you know, it feels good to be able to kind of say to myself, like, you could PR this meet.
Yeah.
Everything's lining up to get a real fat total PR. And it's just great to have someone in your corner that you want to impress,
Mhm.
that you want to show up for, right? And then when you do it, you get that feedback and that real sense of pride that coach is proud of me and they think I'm doing great and all the right things. And shit, that's all I need to have a great freaking training week, you know?
Dude, I love it. And the last point that I'll make is that if you are a coach, you absolutely need to be coachable.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
one area where I think people miss the boat. If you're trying to coach others, but you've never been coached yourself, you are leaving a lot on the table from the ability to learn from somebody and their systems, but also to be in the passenger seat to some extent.
Yeah.
Um, that's just something I've noticed a lot in some younger coaches who, you know, maybe they've only been coached by one person. That's another
Sure.
thing, right? So the more exposures to different people, different approaches, it's going to shape your philosophy a lot more. So
Yeah.
I think having different learning experiences is completely invaluable. And also understanding that being coached by somebody does take a lot of acceptance.
Yeah.
And that's something that you need to be able to empathize with your clients about.
Yeah. And giving up control.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it only makes you a better coach. And
Yeah.
like, we've all done the chase certifications route and all these other things. You'll do so much, right, to really build up your skill set. And I absolutely agree that like being coached by another coach is just part of building your skill set.
It's always the best way. I honestly, that's the best way I've ever learned. Like
Yeah.
when I wanted to learn about what Chad Smith did, I got coached
Yes.
by Chad. When I wanted to learn how Brian Carroll programmed, I got coached by Brian.
Yeah.
You know, Trevor, been coached by
Yeah.
Trevor.
Yep.
On the nutrition side, I've had a number of nutrition coaches. Even when I had my foray into bodybuilding, I chose the best bodybuilding coach I could possibly find, one who is in the education space. I did
Yeah.
his course while he coached me. Right. So, I mean, I'm just a big obviously I coach coaches and I want to be coached by somebody,
Yeah,
and that's the way I choose to do it. So obviously there's a bias there, but this is my podcast, so everyone can fuck right off.
it's a good bias. I like it.
All right, a little bit more of an X's and O's question. Tips for perfecting the sumo deadlift setup.
Ooh, sumo deadlift. You know, I always like to, I have kind of a formula with sumo. So, like, let's say it's a brand new person still learning sumo. They're coming over from conventional, right? One
Mhm.
of the first things I like to do is go to blocks, right? And
Yep.
start higher and slowly work our way down to the floor. That way we can work on our knee over our ankle position, right? And get that good house shape. We can work on driving the hips forward and not trying to lean back
Yep.
off the floor and off the start, because your block pull is automatically going to start in a little bit more forward position. Um, and really get them the reps and the pattern of lockout and not trying to lean back, but being comfortable staying over the top of their feet and driving forward and through. And that's where I think we've seen sumo change a lot. You want to talk about the beginning of powerlifting, right? Where we are now is we'd see it all the time. So much overextension at lockout, right? A
Mhm.
little bit soft knee, toes lifting up, just all these shaky kind of sumo lifts to now sumo's an art of in its own. And like I really like being able to start higher up and work back down to that floor space to really learn the position in all ranges of motion of that movement.
Yeah, I use a very similar approach. There's a few tenets of the sumo deadlift that have to be maintained. And you mentioned the house shape. And I'll revisit a post I made on social media about triangles and straight lines. So
Yes.
when you look at a sumo deadlift from the side, you want to make sure that the knee is on top of the framework of the foot. You want to make sure the hips are as close to the vertical path of the barbell as possible, and that lumbar spine is neutral and there is a little bit of thoracic flexion.
Yes.
Then when you look at it from the front, you want to make sure that that knee is stacked over the ankle, and that the orientation of the lifter with the bar. Oh, here's actually something. When you screenshot videos to look at your position, screenshot the video at the point the bar leaves the floor,
Yes.
not the point where you are in the best position possible.
Right. Because a lot of times you'll be there
Yeah.
and then get pulled forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so make sure you're looking at your technique in the appropriate position of the movement. Uh,
Yes.
so I will start lifters on blocks as well. I also love using a contrast method where I
Mm,
will have the heavier lifts done from blocks and then the assistance work done with a tempo
yeah.
and a light pause on the floor.
Yes.
I call them library deadlifts.
Yeah.
So
Nice and
you have, yeah, I don't want to hear the plates touch. Um, and that will reinforce proper mechanics, because if you are out of position in that tempo and light touch, I'll be able to hear it. And then, that's your immediate auditory feedback.
And that comes to like a great point too, where we see it all the time with sumo. You lock out and then drop back down,
Yeah.
right? And you completely skip over that eccentric pattern, which is just your pull in reverse. And
Mhm.
it's like if you can control that and stabilize that in reverse, it's nothing to go right back up into it. And
Yeah.
having that eccentric control teaches you the position.
Yeah. The other factor with that tempo is,
Mm-hmm.
so this is something that I've become more aware of working with Danny, but the kinematics around the pelvis and breathing while we're doing repeated deadlifts is something that is very important, because the feet are going to be wider.
Yes.
The adductors will have to work much harder to stabilize the pelvis. So
Right.
if you're in any sort of anterior pelvic tilt, you won't be able to hold your brace. So
Right.
by
You know,
challenging,
slaps.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
by challenging your endurance through the use of tempo and light touches,
Yeah.
you cannot use a respiratory brace. You have to use a muscular brace. So the
Yes.
difference between the two, so a respiratory brace for anyone is when you take that Valsalva maneuver into your belt, whereas a muscular brace is a brace done without the additional pressure of air. You can't use a respiratory brace for a set of 5 tempos, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a 50-second set and you're not going to hold
Correct.
your breath for the whole thing.
Correct.
So by introducing that different breathing mechanic with light weights, obviously,
Sure.
you can completely change the way that that lifter's spine organizes around the barbell.
And it really deepens your understanding of what bracing is. Where
Yes.
so many people think their bracing is their breath, and that's when you'll see
Yeah.
right rib cage elevation and
Mhm.
just everything in the lungs, versus really understanding that no, I am pushing out against my belt, I'm creating expansion, right, and I'm holding that flex and that contraction the entire time. You don't even need air to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're up.
All right, let's see what we got. Um, so this is a good one. Kind of goes back to the diet talk we had. What metrics should we track along with our macros for diet?
Okay. Um, well, okay, let's go from macro to micro. So we'll
Love
go
it.
big picture and then we'll go daily. So big picture, blood work, right?
Good.
We're going to want to look at our blood work. Some important metrics to keep in mind, whether you're enhanced or unenhanced,
Mm-hmm.
are going to be your fasted blood glucose, your A1C. So the fasted blood glucose is essentially the your blood glucose at the time of testing, assuming that you're fasted. Want that below like a 5.2 or below 100, depending on the scale that you're using. A1C is your hemoglobin A1C is a measure of your 3-month insulin stability. You're going to want that to be as low as possible,
Yep.
meaning that your blood sugar is as stable as possible. If you're having large fluctuations in blood sugar, that's where that's going to manifest itself. We're also going to want to keep an eye on our kidney function. So something like a cystatin C is going to be
Mm-hmm.
really important because it's a kidney specific measurement. Also our GGT, which is a measure of our filtration rate. On the liver side of things, AST, or sorry, EGFR is what you're going to want for your kidneys. GGT is what you're going to want for your liver. Most doctors will take an AST and ALT. Unfortunately, that's not super uh, effective for lifters because AST and ALT are actually not liver specific. They are in muscle tissue as well. So if you're
And they
training,
can be elevated
yeah,
right
it can be
after.
elevated through training. Yeah. Same with creatinine levels. So
Right.
if you have a ton of muscle mass and you're training hard, your creatinine levels will be high. And if you're taking an eGFR, an estimated GFR, it takes creatinine into account. Whereas if you're getting a cystatin C, you'll get a true GFR. Um, which is why for me that's very important because I do have like naturally higher creatinine levels for whatever reason.
Who do you do your blood work through, Paul?
I actually have, so in Canada, we
Mm-hmm.
have our provincial medical care, but I actually pay for a concierge medical service.
Right.
So I pay 300 bucks a month and my doctor will run whatever labs I want to run. For my clients in the US, I send them through Merrick.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah. Um, then we're going to get into, so then we got our sex hormones. You're going to want to make sure everything is, in tip-top shape. Um, If you are enhanced, you're probably going to want to look at your thyroid a little bit closer
Mm-hmm.
because that can be affected. And then, some other stuff that can be beneficial, vitamin D, keeping a good look at your vitamin D. If you are again an enhanced lifter, looking at your hematocrit and your hemoglobin, making sure you're not running too hot. Blood pressure is going to be also really important, and resting heart rate be some
Yeah.
important metrics. Um, to note, one thing that I've seen a lot, just kind of not related to this question at all, but worth mentioning, a lot of enhanced lifters will report very high hemoglobin or
Mm-hmm.
hematocrit. So essentially, they have very thick blood.
Correct.
What they forget is that if they have undiagnosed sleep apnea, you're essentially sleeping in an altitude chamber. So you're making that way worse. And the number
Right.
one thing that I see when people, enhanced lifters, implement a CPAP, hemoglobin comes way down.
Yes.
It's like,
Yep.
oh, it means you're not
Resting heart rate will come down,
resting
blood
heart rate,
pressure will
blood
come
pressure will come
down.
down, insulin sensitivity will come
Yep.
up, all that
Yep.
good stuff. So, and then on the daily, you're tracking your macros. Fantastic. I also love to track fiber.
Excellent.
For every 1,000 calories that we're eating, we're going to want to have at least 12 to 14 grams of fiber.
Okay.
Gut
Good.
health, hugely important. And having enough fiber will mean that we are number one, fiber sequesters cholesterol. It
Yes.
also stabilizes the release of glucose into the bloodstream. It also allows us to have well-formed bowel movements and make sure that our GI emptying is at an appropriate speed. If you don't have
Yes.
enough fiber, or if you have too much fiber and not enough water, it can affect gastric emptying, which can lead to, that stinky, sulfury fart. That's
Hmm.
because the food isn't moving through you at the appropriate speed. And usually your protein sources and carbohydrate sources are fermenting in your gut. And
Yes.
that's why you have that sulfury poop. Um, so I love to track fiber. I also love to track steps to make sure that we're getting an appropriate amount of non-exercise physical activity. You have something to add?
For steps,
Yeah.
what do you think? Okay, not just to be healthy, right? Not just to get your bare minimum, but
Yep.
like an actual performance increasing amount of cardiovascular, not non-intense work, right? What do you think a good step count should be?
I'm going to push back because if you're trying to improve your cardiovascular fitness, steps isn't going to do it.
Fair. Good.
Because if you're just tracking steps, it's not gonna matter. It's too low threshold.
Okay.
Um, so with steps, it's really interesting. So 10K steps always gets thrown around. And people will say, oh, it's a bullshit number because the Japanese, blah, 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 blah. Well, under 5,000 steps a day, you're considered to be sedentary.
Yes.
So take that into account. There's actually a linear increase in positive health outcomes from 5,000 steps to 12,000 steps for every
Okay.
1,000 steps you go up.
Yeah.
So for every 1,000 steps from 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 6 to 8, you're getting more and more and more healthy. At 12,000, that tapers off. You're still
Yes.
getting some health benefits above
Yes.
12,000, but it tapers off to a significant extent. Plus the time commitment allotted to that's
Sure.
120 minutes of walking. That's
Sure.
a lot of walking. And most people can't get 12,000 steps in a day without structured walks.
Sure.
So what I typically say is whatever you're getting now, let's work our way up to 10,000 and maintain that as a baseline. If we're trying to increase cardiovascular fitness, then we're going to add cardio on top of that, but we're going to include those cardio steps within our 10,000.
Okay.
So for me, I get 10,000 steps a day, no
Yeah.
matter what, but
Yep.
sometimes 30 minutes of those 10,000 steps is on an elliptical.
Yeah. Steady state. And
Steady
okay.
state, 115 to 130 beats per minute.
Love it.
Um, yeah, steps. I also track sleep and perceived sleep quality. I'm not big on like Aura rings and stuff like that, Whoop bands, because those are all like if you're tracking is something a lot of people don't know. If you're tracking HRV,
Yes.
HRV is a lagging metric. So
Correct.
by the time your HRV is fucked up, you're already overtrained.
Right.
I also don't give a fuck if my HRV says I'm great when I feel like shit.
Sure. Sure.
So, and I don't care if it tells me I suck when I feel great. So I
Yep.
would much rather go off of perceived sleep quality. Um, I also will I track resting heart rate with some of my clients.
Yeah.
I track a few biomarkers like perceived level of stress, mood, mental acuity, libido. And I'm not saying, I also will caveat this. These are interesting metrics to track,
Right.
not necessary metrics to track.
Correct.
Because not every client, whether I have a lifestyle client who is,
Sure.
a CEO, I'm not going to get them to track all that shit. I'm going
Hmm.
to track the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Um,
What has the most carryover?
what
What
has the
has
most,
the most
what
bang
can I
for the buck?
use? And
Yeah.
then lastly, on the measurement side, I will take progress pictures and I will take a waist circumference.
Nice. I think the progress pictures is woefully underused.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And it is the greatest thing when you're talking about where you just started and you get 3 months in and being able to see that week to week to week to week to week to week difference is the most motivating and just great feeling you're going to feel about yourself. Even if you're not doing amazing, you're going to see a difference
Yeah.
over a
I,
long enough time period.
I even noticed, look, I take progress pictures very sparingly. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason I do that is actually because I have very deep-seated body image issues. And
Yeah.
this is coming from a guy. I weigh 250 pounds. I have
Yeah.
abs.
You're fat.
Like this is like fucking stupid. And I'm very well aware. But I took progress pictures before our wedding.
Yeah.
And then I took progress pictures a couple days ago. And I've been feeling fat, and I'm like, whatever. But the only reason I'm feeling fat is because I weigh 250 pounds.
Right. You see the number on the
I'm
scale.
like 13 pounds heavier than before our wedding. But then I look at the progress picture, and I'm like, I'm not that fat.
I'm holding it really well.
We're doing good. And it's like the only reason I feel fat is because the number's higher and because I'm eating more food. So at the end of the day, I'm a little bit distended. And like, there's a lot of shit going on there. But
Yeah.
me taking progress, I even still this long into the game
Yeah.
see the benefit of progress pictures. Like, I have a client, he's been like a little bit disappointed. He's like, man, I've only lost a couple pounds. You've been at this for 3 months. And I said, bro, look at your start pictures. Look what
Yes.
you look like right now. I have a lifter. He started with me at 268 pounds. So he's a 2,100 pound total guy. Fucking
Yeah.
jacked. 268 pounds. We got him down to like 255 and 268 eating like 3,000 calories a day.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He's back up to 257. So he's 9 pounds lighter than when we started. He's
Yep.
eating 1,000 calories more per day and
Yes.
and he has abs.
Yes.
I'm like, that's your progress picture.
Yes.
Look at that. And his total went up. It's like
Everything's working,
progress pictures.
right?
Take your fucking progress pictures. I
Yeah.
don't care how fat you feel. Take your pictures.
You're going to be happy you did. And
Yeah.
that's such a great point too, is like understanding that if you are eating more than you were eating prior,
Mhm.
especially if you're at a lower body weight, right? And
Mhm.
your body composition's improved, like that's your win. Is
Well,
you have
people,
so much more muscle mass now and your body's so much more efficient with its metabolic processes that you need more calories to weigh less than you were before. It's
the other,
amazing.
the metabolic efficiency is one thing, but take into account, it's like if I can eat 1,000 calories more at this same body weight, that means that I have 1,000 calories more available for my body
Yes.
to turn into tissue.
Yes.
So that's the argument that I always have had with like a high flux diet being a better
Yeah.
option. High flux meaning high physical activity, high calorie input, because that's truly how you're going to create this like unicorn body recomposition idea.
Yes. The goal, the dream.
Maintenance is relative to output.
Yeah.
So if my output is high, my input of calories has to match in order for me to be at maintenance. If I jack up my activity level and I jack up my calories, that's just more stimulus on one side
Right.
and more input on the other side to create change.
Yes.
And the amount of crazy transformations that I've been a part of just by implementing, hey, let's get 10 to 12,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Let's add food here and let's try to maintain body weight. Look at it
Yes.
like Jordan Wong. You
Oh
seen
my
Jordan Wong
gosh.
lately?
I saw Jordan at the pro and I did not recognize him because his body looks so radically different.
Dude,
It,
he's
it was,
jacked now.
was that Jordan?
Yeah.
It, incredible. Looks incredible.
We didn't even have he dieted on like 2,800 calories. Down to 198.
Around 198.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Huge success.
Hopefully we covered everything. You could
Yeah.
listen
Yeah. I
with
think that's,
nutrition, you can track literally anything and everything. But the main points that I will say is if you're going to track something, make sure that you use it in your decision making. And that
yeah.
goes with training as well.
Right. That's a
Right.
great point.
Um, okay, here's a question for you because I haven't necessarily had to deal with this too often except with myself. How does peaking change when travel is factored into the equation?
I think this was our initial, like, for my group that we went up to Victoria, BC in
Mhm.
April to compete. This was one of our big factors. Was we recognized that, okay, we're all getting very strong. We're all getting into this elite tier of powerlifting, and we want to be able to go do the biggest meets.
Yep.
And that's going to require travel. And that's going to require possibly going out of country now. We have things like the Ab Series Pro, um, and other like events in
Some
powerlifting now.
WRPF Worlds in like Poland or something.
Yeah, and so you never know where that next big competition that you may qualify for
Yeah.
is going to be. And traveling and competing is a skill set. right?
Absolutely.
And so it's something you need to get more and more comfortable doing as you bridge out of the local level, the regional, and the national level, right? And so where I figured we could start, because we're in Washington, we're used to traveling like 3 hours, 4 hours for a meet. And that's one thing, right? Road trips and stuff like that. But
Yeah, you're
Victoria
fine.
was going to be a 5, 6 hour trip.
Mhm.
Plus, you're going into another country. And so, like, in terms of like things to consider when you're peaking and tapering with a travel meet is you want to have as much time to get there and get settled and
Yeah.
adapt to the weather conditions, if there's altitude differences, right? And just get acclimated to your surroundings, get to know the city you're going to be in, where the competition is going to take place. Are you walking? Are you driving? Having your food laid out. Okay, are we going to get there early enough? Is our hotel going to have a kitchenette? Or are we going to get an Airbnb with a kitchen? And making sure your food, right? Because ideally, I would like to be at a competition where I'm traveling 3 or 4 days prior to
I was
competing,
gonna say
if not
when, like
more.
for a Saturday meet, a Wednesday is like your
Yeah,
cut.
is really good. And like being there on Wednesday, not
Yeah.
flying on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
And I think that really makes a big difference when you're talking about, especially if you have to water cut into that meet, and just being able to balance your body's fluids, right, and get some time to shed off that weight you're holding from travel. So the nutrition, I think, is one of the biggest parts of competing, for travel meets and having that all squared away. Also working out, are you traveling in a group? Are you traveling by yourself? Is there a who's going to drive, who's going to fly, what groups are you with? I've kind of like it when we go as a team. So like in Victoria, we had I think 6 or 7, maybe 8 people, all went up together as a team and competed. And it's just nice to have everyone there on the same page. Everyone knows the schedule, knows we're getting meals at this time, we're cooking together, right? We're establishing our community and our game plan before we go in.
Mhm.
Um, and then especially like on meet day in travel, again, this kind of goes back to the nutrition stuff, but just having that everything with you,
Yeah.
right? And having the equipment to facilitate that, coolers, bags, whatever it's going to be. Even having someone running, like orders to go get water, snacks, or energy
Yep.
drinks, or whatever it is, a runner is really helpful. Having roles within your team or within your crew. These people are going to be in the warm up room together, so they're going to help organize the warm up room and run the racks. I think like as much as you can make it as if you can make it as comfortable as possible in that warm up room, especially traveling, being around people you haven't met before and everything else, and kind of like just show some leadership and start getting that warm up room running the way you know it should, makes a huge difference with travel meets. And just kind of embracing the fact that you're meeting lifters that you haven't met before.
Yep.
This is part of the community, right? And just being
Mhm.
friendly with everyone and making new friends and really expanding that can make all the difference in a warm up room when everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows when they're coming back up in the circulation for warm-ups, and everyone's there focused on each other, cheering each other, and invested in one another. I
Mhm.
think that leadership aspect in the warm-up room, especially when traveling, becomes a big point. And you don't want to feel isolated and alone while you've gone to this whole different place to go compete. The more people, right, you can really build support with on the day and really build some good friendships with, the better your competition's going to go. And so that's why I try and tell people is if you're going to go and travel, you better make friends
Yeah.
in that warm up room, and it really kind of makes a difference, in terms of your performance on the day.
Yeah. A few things that I would try to consider in my training leading up to it
Yeah.
is trying to mimic the time of my training sessions
Mm,
to the time I'll be competing. So if there's a time difference, I'll factor that into my training time. So when I was, going from Ontario to compete in Edmonton, there's a 2 hour time difference behind. So I was training 2 hours earlier than I normally would train just to get acclimated to that. The other factor is making sure if there is a time change, you get there with enough time to acclimate your sleep schedule, and
yeah.
that factors in the nutrition too. So the sooner you can time up your nutrient intake to the timing of the local meet that you're going to be competing in, the better you will be. Next is if there is a time change, leveraging supplements like melatonin and magnesium to make sure that your sleep is as
Good.
restful as possible to reset that circadian rhythm as quickly as you can. High dose melatonin, like 20 milligrams or more, can be really effective.
For
Usually,
that reset.
yeah, melatonin is usually dosed like 3 to 5 milligrams,
3 to
but
5.
just
Yeah.
hammer 20 milligrams for a couple nights in a row, and you'll be able to reset a little bit quicker. And then I would also make sure that and this is going to sound really bad, but you're going to want to tailor your attempt selection to things that you are super confident with
Yeah.
because you need to accommodate for the unknown. As much as you
Yeah.
can control variables, you have no idea what's going to go on. So I would make sure that you're approaching the meet with the expectation that no matter what, you're prepared for anything, and your attempt selection should mimic your level of preparedness. So, I've made some mistakes in the past. You open way too heavy, and,
Sure.
and then you end up sewering yourself, or, especially if you're traveling with a team, are you helping out other people the day before you're competing? Uh,
Yep.
when I competed at hybrid, I coached Liv all day the day before.
Yes. Yep.
Um, and that was after a little bit of a weight cut. And I hit my PR squat and then I was dead the rest of the day.
Right.
So, I didn't factor that into play. Ultimately,
That's
I
a good
wouldn't trade
point
it for the
too.
world because
Well,
she had a fucking hell of a day. But
yeah, that's a
those
huge
types of things
point.
matter.
That's a huge point, especially you talk about being a coach and you're going to go compete with your athletes, which is kind of like that next level of challenge
Yep.
as a coach is like, I still want to compete at a high level, but I want my lifters to as well. And I want them to be taken care of. And, we see Trevor do it all the time. There's lots of coaches now that can compete and coach at the same day. And I think that's just part of upping your game as a coach, as an athlete, and as being prepared, like you said, knowing, okay, I have 3 people the day before, I have 2 or 3 people the day of, or maybe more. So who can I get to help the people out competing before I compete? Right. And make sure that all their attempts are going to be
Yeah.
set and
Make
having
sure you have your
handlers taken
food, your
care of.
water, your
Yes.
salt, everything. Um, so I think travel does, listen, it's not rocket surgery.
No.
Just cover your bases, check your
No.
boxes, and then you can do a little bit of stuff on top with regards to managing your sleep schedule, your eating schedule, your training schedule leading into the meet. And I would probably extend your taper a little bit just to be
Oh,
safe.
sure.
I would much rather come into a meet feeling a little bit lethargic
Right. Then just,
versus showing up like really almost bordering on overtrained.
yeah, drained out and
I'd
just
much I'd much rather be way too fresh than way too tired.
totally, totally. Especially when you factor in the recovery of travel,
Yeah,
because that's already going to
it's a
eat into you a
stressor for
little
sure.
bit. Yeah.
Um, you got one more question? We'll finish on a high
Yeah.
note. Make it a good
Yeah.
one.
Make it a good one.
Make it a good one.
Like what your opinion is of powerlifting coaches that are not strong, have never been strong, will never be strong, coaching a sport about strength.
Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna play devil's advocate
Good for you.
because it's my
I'm not.
favorite, it's my favorite job. Outside of being a husband, being a devil's advocate is my favorite job. Um, listen, there are a lot of people who are incredibly intelligent. So could they potentially be great coaches? Yes. You think Boris Shako ever hit a fucking world record? No, he didn't.
No, no, sure.
But he also has a resume of people who have
Yep.
done incredible things in the weight room. He's also been involved in that process for years and years and years and years. So
Decades. Yep.
the amount of evidence that he has of his ability to get people strong far surpasses his own accolades.
Yes.
Now, you are not Boris Shako.
I mean, I am a doctor of powerlifting.
You are a doctor of powerlifting. I will give you that. But you have to earn your keep in that
Yes.
regard. So I would much rather look at what has this coach done for their lifters? Have they made weak people strong? Have they made stronger people stronger? And have they made strong people the strongest? Then looking at, okay, what's their experience level? How long have they been doing it? What's their education? That sort of thing. Thirdly, I would probably look at their own personal
Sure.
accomplishments. That would probably be third on my list. Um, but in this day and age, I know like, oh, that person's really strong. I want them to coach me. It's like the first thing that,
It can be, yeah. Yep.
but ultimately, my gut reaction to that question is, like if you're not strong and you never be strong and you never have been strong, like how do you empathize with your lifting?
How do you do load management?
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
tell someone,
You're
that
doing
their
too much.
90% is 800? Cool, do it for a triple.
Like I actually that question, you asked that question, I thought of like you coaching Logan Werner.
Totally.
This motherfucker's doing speed work triples at
Yeah.
700. Like,
Yep.
how are you gonna load manage that?
Yeah.
You
A
ever done speed
deeply
triples at
collaborative
700?
relationship. And what's funny when you talk about Logan, because that's how like you're going as a coach, you are going to get lifters much stronger than you. It's going to happen, right?
Especially in
And
the
your
weight
job is
room.
to just not fuck them up,
Yeah.
right? And so you'll be a little conservative at first, and then you'll kind of see how they do, and they'll blow your expectations week in and week out. It's just insane. And you start asking them for their feedback. Okay, what hurts? What's aching on you? Are we good to push again? Right.
Mhm.
And so, like, especially with Logan, with TJ, with Nate, um, it's constant. How do you feel? What do you feel after that session? How did the lift feel to you? Did anything go wrong? I can see what's happening with it, right? But what are you feeling as it's occurring, and how do you feel after that session? At the end of this week, how do you expect you're going to feel? Do you have any trips coming up, stressors? Like, what's going to make this that much more complicated when we look at what we're putting together? And then I always try and like work backwards off of what the goal for the competition
Yeah,
is,
I do the same.
right? And so, okay, if we want to squat a PR of 881, okay, that means at 3 weeks out, we need to hit something between 825 and 840 that's pretty fucking fast and doesn't fuck you up and doesn't drain you.
Yeah.
So at 6 weeks out, which is where like I like to do like an RPE 9 single that lets me know what we should be shooting for at 3 weeks out. Okay, we need to be at the 800 range or a 780 that's really fast, right? And work backwards kind of like that.
Taking
Um,
notes because this is what I'm gonna do.
yeah, right. And it is so much more because it is high stakes. The amount of work you're going to put into even just a 1 week training
Right.
block it is going to be a lot more, and it's going to require a lot more from that athlete in terms of what do you feel prepared for,
Yeah.
right? And what are you ready
There's gonna
for?
be a lot
And
of
if you don't,
midweek pivots.
yeah. And if you don't know how to do that as a coach, if all you know how to do is write a 4 week block, 3 weeks up, 1 week down, right, and rinse and repeat, what happens when they get 2 or 3 weeks in and they're already jacked up and you can't pivot out of that?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now you're at 6 weeks out from a comp, right? Like, what are you going to really realistically be able to do and fix?
So our overall answer to this question is we think that those coaches who are not strong, never have been strong, and never will be strong should go fuck themselves.
Yeah, they can fuck off. Like, it's
Um,
powerlifting. It's not that hard.
Man, that was this is like the best possible way to start these like Q&As is actually to have a lot of fun with it. So
Don't you think? Yeah.
we listen, for everyone who doesn't know, Dave and I collaborated on an amazing course, The Essentials of Online Coaching. And we like it's launched, it's live, you can participate. But Coach's Corner U is actually going through a full revamp, relaunching the website, and very, very excited about the new features that we're going to be able to have and the more interactions we're going to be able to have with people in our courses. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Dave, what's next for you, competition wise, coaching wise?
Yeah. So we have our March 2nd, Legends of the Iron Temple at Osborn Performance Systems. That's the meet we're hosting. May 5th, myself and like, I think we have 12 other ops lifters.
Oh, shit.
We're going to do the Fighter Quit Classic in Vegas at Michael Marino's gym. And so that has an tested day, day one, and an untested day, day two. So I'll be coaching day 1 and day 2. And I just have to figure out, we're waiting to hear and see who's going to make prime time on day 2. So I have lifters in the regular session and the prime time session on day 1. And then I have lifters in the regular session day 2 and the prime time session day 2.
Hell yeah.
So it's kind of just seeing where I'm going to land on that. Um, Hopefully I get into the primetime session. That'd be pretty fun to do that with like Dr. Seth. Um, my best friends Nate and Brandon are doing it, and they're over 500 dots lifters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there should be a lot of good competition there. I'd like to squat 760, bench 551, and pull anything over like 733, something like that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yep, and set up a new a new total PR at 308 and have it be like an actual overall PR. So that's really exciting.
Dude, pumped for you. For me, I'm hoping to compete.
Yes.
24. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
going to do everything I can. We Liv's competing twice in like May, well, 2 or 3 times, May, June, July. Uh,
Woo!
so end of the year is probably where I'll do it. We also have plans to start trying for children in 2025, which I'm super excited about. Uh,
Dad gains, bro. It's the
Exactly.
best.
Yeah, so I'm trying to plan so that I can get in a competition either in bodybuilding or in powerlifting. I would hope
Yeah.
it's in powerlifting, but I do want to challenge myself towards the end of the year in something. Uh, I have a couple clients competing at the Arnold, so I'll
Right
be in
on.
Columbus in a couple weeks. And then we got a few clients competing in the IPF circuit up in Canada, getting ready for provincial centrals
Yeah,
now.
provincials is coming up. Yep.
Provincials coming up, so that'll be great. And trying to do a whole bunch of cool shit with Master Athletic Performance, and so it'll be awesome. Dave, thank you so much for being on, and we'll definitely have
Absolutely,
you
brother.
back. I mean, these Q&As are awesome. So, and they're great ways to get additional content for my content building endeavors.
You gotta have the content, buddy. You're up 5 days a week now. You
Five
gotta
days a
have
week.
constant revolution.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and click the link for notifications. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and be sure to have whatever your question relates to. It's my goal to have an expert in that field on to answer those questions. So we'll talk to everyone next time.